Good morning. Welcome to another day of All Spiritual Life Center Sunday morning service. We're grateful that you're here. We're grateful that we can be here to share and to serve our community. Yesterday we had our first annual readings in the park, and we feel it was a success. It was an amazing day. We got to share our gifts with those who showed up, as well as took the time as a community and just celebrated life and the harvest and each other, and it was just an amazing time in the park, and the weather couldn't have been more perfect. It was just beautiful. So thank you to all those who showed up yesterday and all of our service workers at our center here that gave of their time and of their talent in service of the great work of raising this temple in honor of the goddess. So we thank you and we are grateful. So today we are going to have a very interesting service today, because as you know, this is the month that we are celebrating the season of the witch. And in doing so, we are reading the 13 tenets of witchcraft. And of course, you know, in October, we have what's called Halloween. Okay, but here in more of the inner circle of understanding, we call it Sow-in. And Reverend Micah is going to introduce where the meaning came from, what it means, what it's about, and how it got transferred over to what we call today a Halloween, and also what the energy of the season is. So maybe it can help you absorb a little bit more and push away some of those old false beliefs or propagandas that have been spread for about this time of the year. And then that way, maybe you can get into the seasonal celebration and understanding what it's all about. So we are grateful that we're able to do these type of things with you. It is at the 10:30 mark, and we are about to get started. So let's everybody just get into that deep cleansing breath. Get into that peace and that center within. Shake off all the stress and the worry of the week. Breathe deep the new day sun. It's a brand new baby day. It's never been lived before. And you can choose to live today differently than yesterday. All the baggage, all the worry, all the hurt can be left in yesterday as a learning tool and growth for today. Every experience that we have in our life, whether we like it or not, is of our own making. And in some degree, we called it for to ourselves in order to learn the lesson it has to offer. Not all lessons are bad or hard. There are lessons in celebration, giving, service. Breathe in expansion and possibility. Breathe in a new day and a new life. For each day we are born again once we awaken from our slumber. So every morning we say thank you for another day. And every night we say thank you for another day. Mother, Father, God, Infinite Spirit, Divine Goddess of 10,000 names, Protector God of 10,000 names. We call in this divine energy in asking for support and guidance on this brand new day, and how we can better serve that which is divine within us and about us, so we can better understand the mission and the purpose we came in to express in our uniqueness, to give face to that which is divine by allowing our will to align with divine will, and that to be expressed and seen through us, through our actions, through our words, through our thoughts, through our heart. We breathe in the breath of life, rejoicing that it is ever abundant around us, and that if we truly see, we lack nothing. For all that we need is right here, right now. And for this, we are grateful. For even in our darkest moments, the core essence of who we are knows and understands we are truly supported by the divine. Whatever path we choose to take, it is in complete support of divine love, divine light, and divine justice. So we call in the great goddess of creation to help remind us that we create what we see in front of us, and that we start remembering that we can create with divinity. And that's our power. That's our glory. That is our divine birthright. So we light our candle in the unity of the divine, for we are never separate from, we are never without. Even in our darkest moments, the candle will light our way when we turn into the light of our divinity, the light of our union with the divine, with the great goddess and her son and consort, the great God. And we rejoice in this light together as we light our own personal flames so that others may light their candles from ours. And we walk in union with the divine so that consciousness and paradigm shifting may unfold in front of us so that we can begin creating the world and what we all wish to live in. A world that works for everybody. And we say yes to this mission. We say thank you for calling us. And of course we will serve, for that is our destiny, in the service of the soul. And the soul is connected to the source. And the source is our energy, our light, our darkness, our awakening. And we say thank you, thank you, thank you. So mote it be. All right. It's time for me to get a new candle. We have blown that one out and burned it all the way. I am excited. I'm grateful for that because when we started this, it was about that high. So, all right. Well, today, once again, good morning, Renee. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are going to do the 13 tenets of, ooh, somebody moved mine. Did Did you happen to move my what-you-call-it here today?
I did not.
Oh, it got moved. Bear with me for a second. I thought I had it marked, but obviously at some level, either I or we're looking up something and I moved my bookmarks. So there they are. Okay. All right. So again, we're celebrating the season of the witch in this October season, and we want to bring more conscious awareness of what it means to be a witch, what the word means. The word means to bend. And what a witch understands is she understands natural law. And in doing so, she's able to get into the rhythm and bend, allow our will to bend with the divine will. And in doing so, we can influence our environment. We can actually influence in the minds and vibrations of others. So we have to be very mindful because we don't seek to manipulate, although some people do, but hey, that's across the board anywhere you look. But what we seek to do is we seek to influence to the higher frequencies. And that's what it means to bend, okay? So it's not bending your will in a spell or anything to that nature to fit mine. No, 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 no. That is a threefold law that I do not wish to bring upon on myself, okay? What I choose to do is when I see someone else in misery or discomfort, I allow myself to be that space on which they can feel uplifted. That's how I bend the energy around me in order to serve those in the environment around me and to influence their mind to seek that higher divinity within themselves. Those are how I choose to bend, and that's what the true meaning of the word witch means. Again, to bend, and in some sects it means wise one. We have taken the time to understand this knowledge. We take the time to practice it in our everyday lives. And in doing so, the wisdom of understanding begins to deepen within our spirit and our soul. And we begin to understand more of how to use these laws in the service of others. So, okay. So the main tenet of witchcraft is the Wiccan Rede. It is, and it harm none, do what thy will. And it harm none. That means yourself too. Do what thy will. Now, in service of self, except in self-defense, sometimes walking away peacefully, turning the other cheek, or being in that space, the person or the peoples around you don't want any part of that. And if after you have walked away, they pursue to antagonize and deface you and anything to that nature, we can and should defend ourselves. Now, that doesn't always necessarily mean physical violence. This is where, to bend the energy, we work the energy in encircling us and the other person in defense. So I would encircle that person with a shield that keeps them from flinging, let's say, mud, okay, or evil thoughts or intentions to harm anyone else. And at the same time, I bend the energy around me to deflect any of that. So this is another way that we can defend ourselves without physical violence. And this is what it means to be a witch, is to understand how to bend the energies, to get our will in alignment with the goddess will and the God will, and get into that divinity and understanding what the true power is and how to utilize it, how to use it, okay? And understanding the natural laws and how not to be used by them, by bringing ourselves into the awareness of them and how to get in harmony with them so that they can work for us and we aren't just pawns on a chessboard, okay? So, tenet number 1, we practice the right to attune ourselves with the natural rhythm of life forces marked by the phases of the moon and the seasonal quarters and cross quarters. This is why we have our events at all the seasonal changes. Number 2, we recognize that our intelligence gives us a unique responsibility towards our environment. We seek to live in harmony with nature in ecological balance, offering fulfillment to life and consciousness within an ele- evolutionary concept. Pardon me. Number 3, we acknowledge a depth of power far greater than the apparent to the average person. Because it is far greater than the ordinary, it's sometimes called supernatural, but we see it as lying within that which is naturally potential to all. And that's what we're talking about. We get into, when we begin to understand how to use our will properly and we align it into divine will, then we're aligning ourselves with that power. Number 4, we conceive the creative power in the universe as manifesting through polarity, as masculine and feminine, and that this same creative power lies in all people and functions through the interactions of the masculine and the feminine. We value neither above the other, knowing each to be supportive to each other. We value sex as pleasure, as the symbol of embodiment of life, and as some of the sources of energy used in magical practice and religious worship. Okay. Number 5, we recognize both outer worlds and inner, or psychological, or sometimes known as spirit world, the spiritual world, the collective unconsciousness, the inner planes, etc. And we see the interaction of these two dimensions, the basis for paranormal phenomena and magical exercise. We neglect neither dimension for the other, seeing both necessary for our fulfillment. So one of the things I teach in some of the courses that I teach is that your physical life, your work, your job, your kids, your playtime, all of that, and then people have their meditation time and they think that's their spiritual life. There's no separation. It's all your spiritual life, okay? The only difference being is when you go into a meditation, you go in with the intent and the consciousness of, I'm going to work on my spiritual self. But then once you leave your meditation, it's just as if, everyday life kicks in. And you've got to know that you can practice your spiritual life in all aspects of your life because it's all spiritual in nature. So there is no separation. There's no separation for divinity and you and I. We are one within consciousness. So let's have fun with it. Let's move and lean more into it and establish that divine power within us. Therefore, we can be the change we wish to see in the world. Okay. 6, we do not recognize an authoritarian hierarchy, but we do honor those who teach, respect those who share their greater knowledge and wisdom, and acknowledge those who have courageously given themselves in leadership. And we have a lot of 4 leaders that really, and he being one of them, Sybil Leek, there, Margaret Murray, there are Gerald Gardner, there are so many out there that really, in a sense, at the time that they came out and brought us back out of the broom closet, so to speak, have given so much of their life and sacrificed so much so that we could have that freedom to be able to practice the ancient ways of the goddess. So we are grateful to them for doing this so that we can be doing this here online without worry and without fear. So thank you so much to all of those who went before us. We see, number 7, we see religion, magic, and wisdom in living as a being united in the way one views the world and lives within it. A worldview and philosophy of life that we identify as witchcraft, the Wiccan way. Now, let me clarify real quick. Although these are the Wiccan tenets, not all witches are Wiccan, and that still doesn't make them bad, okay? It doesn't make them bad in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I am not Wiccan, but I am a witch. I consider myself a gray witch because there's sometimes in defense, I must use some darker energy in defending the higher and the greater good, as well as sometimes I need to lean into the lighter half of things to shift some of the darkness around me, okay? Again, to bend. Calling oneself a witch does not make a witch, but neither does a heredity itself, nor the collecting of titles, degrees, and initiation. A witch seeks to control the forces within herself or himself. that make life possible in order to live wisely and well without harm to others and in harmony with nature. And there you go. We have a lot of people out there claiming to be a witch, but they're not in any sort of harmony whatsoever with themselves. And to be a witch is to be wise, and that means you must seek the darkness within yourself and to get into harmony and alignment and understand and cast those shadows out into the light. Therefore, you can understand how these things influence you, where you no longer have to have them influence you. You can cast out those demons, okay? Number 9, we believe in the affirmation and fulfillment of life, in a continuation and of evolution and development of consciousness, giving meaning to the universe we know and our personal role in it. And we all have a personal role in it. Number 10, our only animosity towards Christianity or towards any other religion or philosophy of life is to the extent that the institutions have claimed to be the only way and have sought to deny freedom to others and suppress other ways of religious practice and belief. Number 11, as American witches, we are not threatened by debates on the history of the craft, the origins of various terms, the legitimacy of various aspects of different traditions. We are concerned with our present and our future. We don't seek to argue. There's no who's right, who's wrong, who's older, whose practices. No. If you are living in harmony, and if you are seeking wisdom, and you are seeking to understand truth, then calling oneself a witch, hey, go for it. But you have a lot of people out there who call themselves a witch, and all they're dealing with is tarot. And I'm not saying nothing against tarot before anybody gets their broomsticks in an uproar, okay? But they attribute the craft only to tarot, candles, incense, things to that nature. And so that's, for me, that is surface witchcraft, okay? For me, the deeper understanding of witchcraft is getting into me and finding what drives me, finding what blocks me, and removing those blockages so that I can become the magic, okay? So when you get to a point where you realize that you are the magic by aligning with that divine goddess and God within you and getting in alignment with that service of consciousness and the unfolding, then some of those other things, it's not that they don't enhance your magic in certain ritual, but it's not as necessary when you can understand how to manifest it from your thoughts, your vibrations, your vision, and your words. So just thought I'd share that. Number 12, we do not accept the concept of absolute evil, nor do we worship any entity known as Satan or the devil, as defined by the Christian tradition. We do not seek power through the suffering of others, nor accept that personal benefit can be derived only by a denial to another. 13, we believe that we should seek within nature that which is contributory to our health and well-being. We seek out our herbs and our oils, and we don't go running to Big Farm every time some ache and pain. We seek what is the root cause of this illness within us, because most of our dis-ease, our physical dis-ease, is contributed to a mental, emotional, or a spiritual malady that we are either, one, not aware of, or we're choosing to ignore. And when we focus only on the physical, that's the last place that dis-ease begins to manifest, because that's what gets our attention. So if we are being mindful about what we put into our bodies through nutrition, we're being mindful about what we put into our bodies with our thoughts, being mindful about what comes out of us in our words, then we can get into that harmony of nature, and a lot of our dis-ease disappears because we've discovered what the root cause of that dis-ease was. So that's pretty powerful. So I am grateful that we can share that with you this month. I hope I don't remove my hidey spot. Now let's go into our healing service, shall we? Let's take that deep breath. Good morning, Kenny. Welcome. I am so grateful to see you today. Let's take that deep breath. Let's center in the heart. And as we center in our heart, The heart being the representation of the goddess. Let's let our heart get in our mind be in alignment, for the mind is the God. And this is where the balance of masculine and feminine are established within our body unit, within our consciousness. And since science has proven that we have brain cells called neurites within the heart that think independently from the one brain between our ears, then the old adage, thinking with your heart, has great wisdom to it. For the heart emanates an electromagnetic field much broader than the brain. So one of the keys to understanding is allowing our heart to think for us and allowing the heart to be what stimulates the brain. And we get into alignment where they work as one. The heart being the intuition, and the mind being the reason and the logic on how to fulfill the intuition, to bring it into manifestation through action. And this is the divine masculine and feminine at work. For the heart opens to the divine masculine. And the divine masculine allows the heart to be what leads us. There's no conflict. There's no one above the other. It's unity consciousness within ourselves. And if we seek to bring unity conscious awareness to the planet's peoples, then we must begin with us first. To remember that we are connected to the cosmos. For as above, so below as above. None of us know where our spirit came into being. Therefore, power greater than ourselves brought us into manifestation. And since that power is seated within each and every one of us, and that means we have latent, dormant within us an active principle of creation. And when we awaken these principles within us and align them, then we become powerful co-creators, not only our lives, but for the environment, the people around us. And this is what it means to bend. Breathe that in, for that is your truth. That is all of our truth. This is the gift that no man can take away from you ever. This is your divine birthright, and you possess the same creative power of that which created us. And we celebrate in that power each and every time that we align our heart to our mind. For then we create the sacred marriage within us. And we become the Holy Child, the Divine Trinity. And this power is greater than our wildest dreams. And when we align these two sources within us as one, and we allow ourselves to become the Holy Child, then we birth new consciousness onto the planet. A higher frequency of consciousness from the heart and mind of man. To shine the star that we are. To understand true divine justice is not about murder, but it's about equality. And we do not shy away from this gift. While it's unknown, we step in and lean into it without fear. And we trust the support that is unseen all around us. For as we heal ourselves in our own personal aspect of consciousness, then we begin healing the human collective consciousness. For every time we cast a shadow out of ourselves and look at it in the light of divinity, that vibration returns not to source, but to the collective of humanity. And we're aiding someone else in support with that energy into turning withinward and becoming what they truly were meant to be. So healing oneself is not just a personal, but it's a collective unity consciousness that aids in all of humanity. And as we each begin to light our candle and grow the flame of the soul, then that light is distributed into the collective of humanity. And that is service of the Most High. That is the great work of unfoldment that we said yes to being here to do. So we take action each and every day in all of our affairs. We follow the intuitive guidance. We learn the difference between our ego voice and our divine voice. And we lean more into the divine intuitional voice, even if we don't understand or can't see where it's leading us, but we know it's where we must go, and then we trust. And we allow ourselves to trust. So the first part of this prayer is for you on the personal level. I ask the great unseen healing force to remove all obstructions from my mind and body and to restore me to perfect health. I ask this in all sincerity and honesty, and I will do my part. And my part is being in conscious awareness of this as many minutes of each day. And if I fall asleep, waking up quicker and sooner without beating myself up, but just course correcting and learning from the experience. For I know that as I learn, I offer that to others. This next part of the prayer is for that human collective and from family and friends who need of healing as well. So I ask this great unseen healing force to help both present and absent ones who are in need of help and to restore them to perfect health. I put my trust in the love, in the power of the great divine God, Goddess. Thank you. So mote it be. Thank you for joining me on the healing part of this service and for the opening prayer and 13 principles. We are turning everything over now to Reverend Micah, and he is going to share with us the meaning of Sow-in. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you can learn something, and bright blessings to each and every one of you. We love you here at All Spiritual Life Center. You ready?
Ready.
All righty. Come over here and do it.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy Sunday to you. I don't know about you all, but I had a fantastic time at that festival yesterday. My body has the sores of one who was dancing in extreme joy in nature itself.
You're not the only one, Reverend Micah.
That's right. Dancing and maybe a little bit of the soreness was shared by all of our tribe and the people who joined us. So I want to say thank you all very much for that. Now, to those who followed the service that I was speaking on 2 weeks ago, you'll notice a couple of things. One, I am a lover of history. I'm a lover of researching the origins of events and words because I feel like these are key events to help us see how we got to where we are now. And today will definitely be no exception. Now, 2 weeks ago, we studied the history of the word witch in relation to the verse in Exodus. Now, today we're going to be talking about another witchy subject, as it were. You know that Reverend Michelle talked about what we call Halloween today. And actually, how it started over 2,000 years ago was the holiday, or what we call the Sabbath, Samhain. You may have seen this word pass by in maybe a show that you watched or a book that you read. You'd think that it was pronounced Samhain, but the Irish Celtic language is anything but straightforward in how it's pronounced. So it's actually Samhain. Now, we're going to give a little bit of a history of the Celtic people and how they celebrated this holiday. As I said, it was over 2,000 years ago that this began. They celebrated this holiday, and the Celts lived in what we would know today as Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France. It was a celebration of the end of summer and the harvest and the beginning of the winter. And this was known to them as the dark half of the year. The sun would be setting and being lower in the sky than how it normally was during the summer. It would be setting a lot sooner, and the latter half of the day was given over to the moon and the night. The cold of winter to them was associated with the theme of death because they saw the vegetation and the trees going into hibernation. They would begin to wilt. So now it was a time for the Celtic people to also go into their own hibernation. But before that set in, they had themselves a most holy holiday. As I said, we call that the Sabbath. They believed that on this day, Samhain, the veil between the living world, where we are now, and the spirit world, where the ancestors and their guides and their deities lived, was at its most thinnest. So from that, they perceived that they would communicate more easily and with their ancestors and with their spirit guides. So due to the presence of the spirits, their own priests, which they called the Druids, were going to be able to give a fortune of what was to come during the winter season. And to them, this was actually most fortunate, because you have to imagine, 2,000 years ago, before the cities that we have today, before the widespread agriculture that we have, this was a pretty harsh kind of environment that they lived in. There would be fighting between different clans, even with invaders from other countries. It wasn't always guaranteed that they would have a good crop to see them through the winter. So this was a great thing that the Druids were able to give to the other Celts. They could let them know what kind of a winter they were in for. Is it going to be particularly harsh? Is it going to be a little more easygoing? So to commemorate the Samhain event, the Celts would create a large bonfire at the center of their community. And on this bonfire, they would give a portion of their crops and a portion of some of their cattle to burn in the fire itself. Now, I want to go ahead and clarify something. No, they did not sacrifice virgins or other human beings. If such a group were to do so, they do not speak for the whole of the practice itself. So I want to make that point very clear. It was not about virgin sacrifice. It was not about the appeasing of evil spirits or monsters. That's all superstition that got invented much later on. So I hope that thought of the sacrifice doesn't, the animals and the crops, doesn't dissuade you from the benefits of this Sabbath, because these were acts that they used to honor their deities, their gods of the harvest, who brought good crops to them for the year. This was their way of saying thank you for the wonderful gifts and the food that we do have, and in this we honor you. Now the participants, when the bonfire was erected and they gave their offerings to the fire, they would dance around it dressed in animal skins and animal heads that they used to keep them warm for the winter season. So in that sense, not just the Druids, but the Celtic people themselves would take that time to also practice giving each other their fortunes. Medium messages, spirit messages, we get this idea from there. So fast forward a few years later, after the Romans in the Common Era had conquered much of the Celtic territory, they learned about Samhain and decided to integrate it into two of their own festivals. The first was called Feralia, and this took place in late October for the Romans, where they would also honor the passing of their dead and their gods and deities. The other festival was called Pomona, named after their goddess of fruit and the trees. Pomona's symbol was the apple. The apple, we know that it's very, very symbolic. But for them, how do you think that they cultivated the use of the apple? The bobbing of apples, so associated with what we call Halloween today. Much later, Pope Gregory III would name Samhain All Hallows Eve, because the next day after, they called it All Saints' Day, and they would use this time to honor their Christian martyrs and Christian saints. So, as you may guess, All Hallows Eve soon became Halloween. That's a nice rundown of some of the history here, and that's not really the only Sabbath that has been made to use in a lot of Christian practices today. I could give an entire month's sermon on how many of the other Sabbaths were used and called something different. The winter solstice, Yule, we call it Christmas. Easter, we have, that came from the time of the harvest and the renewal. That was itself a Sabbath, but more on that to come later. So now we understand the wearing of costumes, the use of food to honor the spirits, and the bobbing of apples. It's easy to see how Halloween came to be what it is today, but the effects of the Roman influence actually are greater than we may realize. You see, back then, the people didn't have an official calendar. What we use today is called the Gregorian calendar, which more came into creation around 1500, as you may guess it, by the Roman Catholics. And the reason I think this came about is with the addition of the Gregorian calendar, there was an additional 70 days introduced in one calendar year. That's how we came to 365. They determined that this was just an easy way to understand the passage of time and make that more readily known to the common people. But here's the thing about that. You see, the common people, the Celts at the time, understood the passage of the year by the passage of the sun, the moon, and the stars. So they were more directly in tune with the seasons and when they would precisely change. They didn't need a calendar to tell them how to do so. And the addition of 70 days in a calendar year actually throws things a little off kilter. Here's why. The 2 months that were added because of the Roman influence, July, affiliated with Julius, also known as Julius Caesar, and August, also Augustus, another Roman emperor during that time. When you add those 2 months in the middle of the year, what was normally celebrated, what we call October right now, but in November, we celebrate what we call Thanksgiving. That actually happens closer to September. That's the celebration of the harvest. So as we lead it towards what we know as October now, that was actually the signal of the end of the Celtic year, the end of the witches' year. And Samhain, what we call the Eve now, was actually something similar to New Year's Eve that we call today. That was the celebration of all the events that had come before. All the people who had perhaps passed on earlier in the year, they took this time, Samhain, to celebrate that end of the year. When that bonfire would extinguish after the night and the new day would come, starting the new year, the Celts would relight the bonfire to symbol the start of the new year itself. You see how an addition of 70 days kind of throws all of that off? You may feel a little off kilter when these events come around because they're not being exactly honored at the specific time determined by the people back then. Or the stars themselves. We don't spend enough time actually looking at the passage of the stars and the sun and the moon. They itself are our clock. They're all that we need to understand the passing of the year. We're so distracted looking at a calendar or looking at a watch to determine all of that for us. But who invented such a thing? Food for thought. So, the dark half of the year is actually more symbolic than just the coming of the winter. Since the winter is a time of hibernation, it's not a time for you to get stagnant. It's not a time for us to just retreat inside, wait for it all to pass, and then the light and the warmth come to usher us in again. We have to live during the winter. We have to keep ourselves a little warm and create fires for those things. But the true importance of winter and the true importance of Samhain that we should recognize is that it is not about the commemorating or the avoidance of evil spirits. Because the dark half of the year actually tells us to retreat within, to look at our self-created dark half within us so that we can find light therein. So, this brings me to what the word Samhain actually means. Yes, it is named after the Sabbath itself, but did you know that the word Samhain comes from the Irish word which means together, with, and in common? And since Samhain is the celebration of those who have passed on and our spirit guides themselves, then this is a day where we are together and in common with them, more in the same space than probably at any other time, due to the passage of the stars and the heavens themselves. But I want to ask a very important question. Do we need to wait for one day of the year to actually communicate with our ancestors and our spirit guides? Do we need to wait to go within on just one particular time of the year to do so? If they're not limited on a certain day by which they communicate with us, then why should we limit ourselves to one day as well? Perhaps if we understand that the dark half is not just a certain time, what if we could understand the dark half of our week, the dark half of our days even? When we understand those aspects, we understand that maybe it's a time of day, all days, that we should take to go within, to find that light within, to not be afraid of the shadows, to not be afraid of what lurks in there, because it's not evil. It's just waiting for you to see the truth of it. It's waiting for you to see that it is a part of you, just as what we would see in light. So, I think it's entirely possible and very imperative that we should keep our channel open through the light half and through the dark half so that we can have that proper guidance through what we may call our trying times, even if they're not trying, especially if they are and especially if they are not. All of these days are important to keep that channel open. Don't you agree? I think we do all too much already. We just think, you know, I think it's time for my spiritual development, but I'll do it on just this day and then forget it the rest of the days. I can't possibly glean all of the knowledge and wisdom in one day of a week or just a few hours in a day. Why not do it all the time? It's nothing to actually fear. So this history, I think, is very important to understand where we have come from and where superstitions and the will to try to turn something evil so that you can just glorify what I'm bringing instead. I speak for that Roman influence. When you understand the true history of something and when you understand the true meaning of the word, you understand more of its power. And then superstitions and fear will no longer be guiding you in that. You won't have anything to fear from going through the dark half because you understand that you bring that light into the dark half and then you receive its wisdom so that it therefore becomes part of that light within you. Keep that central bonfire burning. Keep it going at all times, no matter what time of the year it happens. There are no ghouls or monsters or things to be aware of at this time, just your ancestors and just your spirit guides. I hope this has been beneficial for you all to understand the true history of Samhain and the true history of what we call Halloween. Now, I would not be one to say that this means that you shouldn't have your kids dress up and go trick-or-treating. We are here to actually give of the candy then too, because it is symbolic, and I feel like that's a family thing that can be enjoyed. Just understand the true history of it is all that we ask. Thank you for that. Anything that you have to add, Reverend Michelle?
No.
All right. Well, I hope that's been very beneficial for you all. Now we come to the portion of our service called announcements. As Reverend Michelle spoke of earlier, we have decided the date and the time of our next All Spiritualist Message Night. Get your calendars ready. It is happening December 12th.
No, 13th.
December 13th, excuse
Friday,
me.
13th.
Yes, Friday the 13th. December 13th from 6 to 9 p.m. Look for that event to come soon on Facebook. Look for our flyers around. We will even be putting additional ads out there so we can celebrate more of the Yule season with our fellow guests and our service members. So, with that said, that's all the announcements I can think of. Anything for you, Reverend Michelle?
Not at this moment.
All right. Then we come to the benediction. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you will, close your eyes with me. Take in that fresh breath. Mother Goddess, thank you for sharing that divine wisdom with us today of understanding what the dark half of the year truly means and that it is nothing to fear but a time of grand celebration. Help us remember that we don't need a certain time of the year to actually commune with our spirits and commune with our ancestors. That wisdom is available to us at all times of the year, no matter what periods we are going through. And may we embrace that wisdom and may we take action on it for the full betterment of not only our lives, but the lives of everyone and everything around us. Help us understand that the passing of life is a celebration and nothing to truly mourn, and that they are never far from us, ever. And with this, so mote it be, blessed be, and amen to every one of you. We thank you all for joining us here at All Spiritual Life Center. Enjoy it, sweetie. We wish you all a fond farewell and hope that the week brings many blessings to you and many kernels of wisdom.
Enjoy the witchy season. Have fun with it.
Enjoy, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.